everyone. Welcome to our Friday night beading class. And really happy to see you guys all. Hope you're enjoying your weekend or off to a great start for your weekend. Today we're going to do a really fun project. It is a pearl daisy chain bracelet, but it can also be made into many other things like a necklace. It has a cool closure. It's just something fun to play with, just a little beaded bead that goes through a little loop. And so we'll have a really fun time creating this. It can be made of lots of different beads. And I've got some, of course, variations and inspirations to show you guys. And so here on my mat, I've got a layout of the supplies that you'll need. And what's shown here are some pearls. And on this design, I used some 6mm and 8mm pearls from these strands. And the seed beads I'm using are a vintage gold in size 11 and a pearl in size 6. And then I've got some thread, some optional charms if you want to add a charm to your design. And then for needles, I'm going to be using some size 12 beading needles. You could also use the 10s if you like, but with the 11s, I found the 12 was just a little bit easier to get through a couple passes. So the 12 was easier for me, so that's what I suggested. But it's, of course, if a 10's what you've got, go for that. It'll be totally fine. And then just some other things you might want to have handy are some chain nose pliers to do some jump rings with, and to flatten your thread to make it easier to get through. And also, of course, you'll need some scissors to cut the thread. So I'm just using my usual precision scissors. And let's see if there's anything else I'm forgetting. Oh, it can be handy to have a tape measure if you want to measure your design. But that's it. Yeah, so a pretty easy project with lots of potential to make it your own. So I'm going to just clear the mat a little bit here. So in the handout, it calls out for the frost color, and I'm going to work with black today just so that you guys will be able to see my thread a little easier. And so in this design, in the handout, it says to cut about 70 inches. And the reason it's so much thread is that you want to have a bunch left over at the end to make the little beaded bead. And then there's a pretty long tail left at the beginning that will be used to make the loop. And so it is possible to add thread, and I'll show you guys how to do that with this design. But on a bracelet, you might not need to. You may not need to add any extra thread if you wanted to make something really long. It's helpful to know how to do it. So I will definitely cover that. And what I did there, you guys have seen us do that a lot. It's just flattening the end of my Wildfire so that I can get it through my beading needle a little bit easier. And if anyone's having trouble with getting their needle threaded, that can really help. It really helps me a lot to do that. So there's my needle. I'm just folding it over, leaving about 7 inches folded over or so. And it's worked on a single strand. And so now I'm going to get out my size 11 seed beads. And these are tiny, so I'm working a little closer today. I'm going to try to stay in frame, but you guys feel free to let me know if I go. My frame's as big as my hand, but we can see a lot better this way, I think. All right. And so the first thing you want to do is just go ahead and lock in the end of your thread. And to do that, I'm just going to create a little stop bead with my size 11 seed bead. Bring it down to the end and leave a pretty good tail. You'll need about 15, maybe a little bit more than that, inches to do your seed bead loop. So there's my stop bead with a pretty long tail. And once you've got that, you just want to string 3 size 11s, one of the size 6s. I'm just going to slide this up a little bit. There we go. And then you need one more 11. So that was 3 of the size 11s, 1 6, and then 1 size 11 bead. And go ahead and bring that down until it touches the stop bead. And once you've got that, this is where this version of daisy chain is a little bit different than some of the other daisy chains that you may have seen. And it's just because when I taught myself daisy chain, I actually made it up as I went along and didn't follow any directions. And so it's kind of a different method. But stick with me here. I'm gonna go back through that size 6. So, you know, we strung those 11s, we strung the 6, we strung the 11. And now in the other direction, I'm going back through my size 6 bead. And just pulling it down, just like that. And now I'm going to go back through my 11, the first 11 that is at the base of my 6. And so I'm going through it in the opposite direction as my exiting thread. So my exiting thread's going through the 6, right? I'm going to come up behind it in that other direction. So like that. And after I do that, I'm going to go back through the 6. And what I found this does and why I like it is we don't have any gaps. So if you've ever seen some of the more traditional, sorry, my tail got a little bit looped in there. Let me get my tail out of the way. But in some of those traditional designs with daisy chain, you do get a little gap. And to describe what I mean, I can kind of try to simulate it, but I think you guys have all seen it where they have kind of like the little, there's my tail. That's the only catch with working with a really long tail is you'll get it stuck there. There we go. Okay. So going back through that 6, this makes that not have as much of a gap, and that kind of helps with getting a tight stitch with your chain. So let's see here if you guys can see that pretty well. So I've gone back through the 6. And now I'm going to go through that 11 again. And I'll do that again. But what you see there is it kind of just looks like it's strung right now, right? But my 11s on either side have changed their orientation to be going like that. So now I can just make a loop around. So on a size 6 seed bead, if you want to surround it with beads and you're using 11s like I am, a count that worked for me was to get 4 size 11s and then come back up through the 11 that is behind your 6 there and pull tight. And I'm going to pick up 4 more and then come down through that 11 again on the other side, just through that 11 bead. And when you pull tight, you get a little pearl surrounded by beads, a little daisy. And that's the whole step. I'm going to do it a few more times. And I'm going to show you guys a couple ideas for how you can change it up. But the next thing you want to do is pick up 3 more 11s. Go through the 6. And then get 1 more 11 on there. Bring that down. Now we're going to do that same thing again. We're going to go back through the 6. And then we need to go through that 11 that's back here, but going in the opposite direction. And then back through the 6. And when you pull tight, you get something that looks like that, where both of those 11s on either side are kind of sitting like a little rings of Saturn, sort of. And then come up through that 11 again. And then loop around. With, again, with the size 6, 4 of the 11s works really great to surround it. And you want to just go through that 11. And I am kind of paying attention to what direction it's which direction is up and which direction is down. So for me, it's like this. And so I've got 4 here, 4 more 11s. I'm going to put them on the needle here and then just come up just through that 11.
Hey, Danielle, it's Carmi.
Hey.
Sharon just made a great call out. So would you say that basically those 11s are stop beads on either side of the pearl?
Yeah. Yeah, that's what they are. I needed that because when I was making daisy chain the other way, I would get these really big gaps in between each of my daisies and where my, connecting beads were. And so I thought I was doing it wrong because I was getting gaps. So then I started playing with it, and this is how I've done daisy chain ever since. And I didn't even know it was weird until I took a class on how to really do daisy chain. But I like it, and it gives you the opportunity to use a lot of different size beads any way you'd like to. And I think that's a good chance to bring over this example. I wanted to talk a little about spacing. Was a shout out to Pat if you're here. They have a lot of designs have different spacing here. So like some of them have 3 or 4 or even 5 beads in between each of your daisies. And some of them can have as few as 1. This design has 2 that aren't involved in the looping around, right? So it looks almost like they're just going right one to the next one. And so on, for example, on the sample design, they just look like they're right next to each other, right? So that's really cute, but you can space them. You can space them out and get something that looks totally different. This is just what 3 looks like instead of 2. And this is a 4mm bead instead of a seed bead. It's a gemstone bead I got on the strand wall. So you see, you can make like a whole necklace like that. And then the other cool thing you can do is you can change up your bead sizes. So it's a good segue into showing that. So what I'm doing, I'm pulling out some of these that I have left over from another strand that I cut. I'm gonna grab a 6mm and 8. And what I found for this size bead, so for a 6mm bead, if you're working with 11s like I am, going around a 6mm bead, 8 of those size 11s on either side was a really good count. And for the 8mm bead, I found that count to be 10. And so what I was thinking I might do is show a longer chain just for fun, because I did get a couple questions about that. And it's also a way you can speed up your design a little bit. So here's 5. Let's put 5 on there. So that's going to leave 4, a space for 4. Sorry, and then go through the larger bead and pick up 1 more 11. And we're just going to make our Saturn. And coming up through that 11 at the other side, going in the opposite direction. And then you can get to a point where you're doing it in one swoop. Like I went through that, and then I went right back to the large bead, and then back through my 11. And so there's that. Let's grab 8. There's 4. And 4 more. And see, it's pretty tight. Getting the needle through. This is kind of why I was thinking a size 12 needle would be helpful. But in my opinion, that the tightness of it is actually really good. You don't get all that, the gaps. And if the thread, stretches a little bit, you have some room, some tension to absorb that. There's 4 more. Okay, so there's 8. And it's coming up just through that one bead. Okay, and so there's one with a longer spacing. But I kind of like the shorter spacing myself, but it would be cute if to, do a whole design with that kind of space would be interesting, just to have like, it's something I wanted to see. And so I'll copy what I did there again. I got 4. Now I've moved up to my 8mm bead. Getting another bead here, come back down. And again, I'm just capturing that 11 on the other side, headed through that 8mm bead here. And then back through my lip. Okay, so now I need 10 to go around that 8mm bead there. So this design is really beautiful with you know, a mix up of any kind of, it's another stash buster, honestly, design that you could use to take all your like little leftover bead mixes, and all you'd have to do is just play with the counts for surrounding them. Just pretty easy to do because you just test it. And if you like it, keep going. And if you don't, just backwards needle back out and try another count until you get something that you like the look of. So it can work for rondelles, it can work for any beads really. And there's 10 on the needle there. And then back through just that 11. All right, there's another one. So it would be a cute earring, actually, just looking at it like this, to put a charm at the bottom. And the way you might want to do that is just coming out of one of these and making one of these like kind of like top loops. You could do that, put a charm on it. So in addition to just a bracelet or even a necklace, you could do that. But I'm thinking what I'll do is I will switch ahead to a sample I have that's almost where, you know, I've done a bunch of these and show how to finish these ends. So let's see, I'm gonna get this one out of the way, and then over here, all tangled here. I got what I worked on earlier, but it needs its finishing on it. So let's start with our beaded bead. And in the handout, it says to go 2 or 3 beads and then start making the bead. If you wanted to, you could do more than that. So to show you what it looks like. And actually, it doesn't matter which side you did your big beads on. I'm just noticing that I did it that way this time, but I'm going to do my beaded bead with this end because this is where I have left all of my long working thread. But here's what it looks like with just 2 spaced beads. And that looks pretty good. You could do one less than that, but it would be a little bit tight going through your loop. And you could give it one more, and that might make it easier to put on. So just play with that and see what you like. I liked this configuration because it was really tight looking when it was on. So that's what I was going for there. But go ahead and play with that count. If that count is something that you want to experiment with, it's a great place to do that. So let's, I'm going to pick up 3. And then I'm going to pick up 2 size 6 beads. And in the handout, I think it says to do 7 to go around. And so all I'm doing here is just making a really cute beaded bead.
Danielle, it did say 7.
It did say 7. Yeah, I was gonna grab it and show it just in case anyone wants to see what I'm doing, because I know it looks kind of like, it's hard to explain until you've seen it, but all we're really doing is kind of like a spiral. Do you guys remember well, some of you guys might remember we did a spiral class a long time ago where we're just going to make a bunch of these and we're going to keep going until we have 8 of these surrounding them. And then we're going to put a little decorative top on it. And it goes pretty fast. So I'm just going to go through that. So I've got 7 beads and I'm going back through those 6s in the opposite direction. So you just sit like that. And here's 7 more. And so you can make this little beaded bead as poofy as you'd like. You can put more than the 8 I'm going to go for, or less, if you want to see more of your core beads, for example. And I also think it would be cute with other types of beads inside, like different colors. Or like a crystal, because then it would shine from inside of the, the surrounding arms. So lots of cool things you can do. There's my 3. Okay. The only thing you'd want to do is you make sure that the internal hole diameter of the beads you choose to be your core beads inside, make sure those are big enough to go through these multiple passes, because we're going to go through this a bunch of times. So let's see, we've got 1, 2, 3, we've got 5. Let's just do a few more. All right, 2 more. And the last one, and we'll see how it looks if we like it or not. Okay, there's 7. All right, and I thought that was a pretty good little beaded bead. I could get one more on there, but I also wanted to have some movement so it can fit through my loop, and just kind of a cute little way to end it. And so I'm going to put a little decoration on top. So grabbing a 6 and then grabbing an 11. And then come back down, do the 6, and now's a chance to weave in. And of course, reinforcing the, sorry, I jumped away, the connection here. You want to reinforce that maybe once or twice. And so a good way to do that is to go ahead and go through this little loop here. So I came down through these 2, and I'm going to loop around my circle that I made around this bead. I'm using it to turn. And it's really tiny, but I'm just going slow and just watching, making sure I don't skip any of those beads. Okay. And so now when you get to the other side of the spiral, you do want to go through that 11 again, just to preserve the symmetry of it. So I went through that original 11, and now I'm going to go back up. And it's super tight, so there we go. Got it. Okay, so I just went through those 2. And so what you can do to weave in from here, you can try to go through all of the ones above it again, but something that I like to do is kind of use those little thread bridges. And if you guys remember when we did the dot stitch bracelets, we used the thread bridges here to turn. You can do that again, or you can just go ahead and go all the way through it again and come up to the top and then come down to this bead and weave through some arms. So either way is a great way to weave it in. And so I'm going to switch down here to show you guys this, and then I'll weave this in at the end just to make sure I have time for everything. We'll come back to that. So let's see, on this end, I didn't flatten that yet. So I'm going to go ahead and flatten that one. And I need another needle. I'm going to grab the one off this one. Here we go. Okay, and so for this side, again, lots of options here for how to do it, but first thing I want to do is get the stop bead off. It's got a stop bead on there. So just go through, probably would have been easier to pull that off before I threaded it, but there you go. I got it. So there's two right there. And again, this is all style, but I want to just make sure I'm sticking with what I did here is I just came out of this bead and I thought that looked really cute. I'm going to do that again. So that means I need to take off these first two. But you could just start building it out of here. And actually, I don't need to take those off. They'll just become the first two beads in my loop. So I'm just going to start stringing. And I think you can do a lot of different counts here based on what size you made your bead. I would recommend, instead of following the counts in the handout, just test it in real time and see that it fits. They're more of a guide, the counts that are in there, because there's just a lot of variation, things like this. So I'm going to look at it and see how much I need. I'm going to go with a few more, like 3 more. And then go ahead and grab a 6, bring that down. And then we're going to do that stop bead trick again. Just pick up another bead, go back through it. All right. And I just want to match what I've got here on the other side. So just picking up some beads. And truth be told, I actually don't count. I just lay it next to the one I just made. And if it looks good to me, I go with it. Especially with these little tinies, because counting can take that's a strain on the eyes for sure. So I've got a few more to go here. Let's see. Yeah, that looks good. Okay, so I'm exiting from this way. So I'm going to go back through it this direction. And before I reinforce everything, I'm going to test it and make sure it's good. And it appears to be maybe even a little big. But once I tighten it up, I might be happy with that. I noticed on this one that much smaller C, and it's a little challenging to get through it. So maybe a few more than that, but not quite this many. And so what you'd want to do to get out of it, and I'm purposely showing this just to show I want to show the process so that you don't have to rely on patterns. You can just come up with it as you're working and decide what you like. So you do have to pull off one side, but for the other side, you don't have to. You just want to come through here. And then just take a look at, I had this many. I feel like 4 off of that would be good. Get that rethreaded there. And so my thread's gotten really soft. I'm going to do a little trick here. I need to find my scissors. Those are right here. Trim a tiny bit. And then just make another one of those little flat ends. And bring that through. Okay. So a 6 and chasing that around. and an 11. And then just back through that 6, and I think this is going to work. These are so tiny. It's interesting because I'm working around my phone, so I can't put my face right above the mat. So when I'm picking them up, I'm kind of looking at them from the side. Let's see, I'm gonna pull a few off there. Okay. Going back through that one. So if you're like me, button hoops are kind of my nemesis, but they're so cute when they're done. So just take the time to play with it and see. So I'm going to reinforce that. And to do that, you just want to go back through everything again. There we go. And you want to go through the 11 that's on the outside of that size 6 and then back through the 6. And I'm pinching in my fingers the side that I haven't gone through yet because you can lose track of that really easy when you're at this step turning. So I know I need to go through this one. All right. Okay, so here I am at the bottom. I'm going to go back through that 11 one more time. This is going to be a tight pass through that 11. So this is where that 12 comes in handy. And I'm there. So from here, you can weave in as you like. You can go around or through the bead or a little bit of both. I went around once, so I think I'm going to go. Sorry, I didn't actually on this side. Okay, we'll go around it. And that's pretty much the pattern. That is the whole bracelet. Now you can add a clasp if you don't like doing, you know, this style closure is, it's really cute, but it takes a lot of time. If you were going to make bunches of these and like if you were selling your work, you could just throw a clasp at the end and it would save you a lot of time. And the cute design on a bar, it just really stands out. So yeah, and then another thing you can do to personalize it is you can throw some charms on. So I'm thinking we're actually doing pretty good on time. So I have time to just quickly throw these strands through a couple loops so I can cut them. And we'll get a little finished design to look at.
Hey, Danielle, it's Carmi.
Hey.
I just want to let you know what was really important in the sidebar that someone noticed is even if you don't want to make this design, learning how to make these finished hoops, it's basically having findings anytime you have beads. So you can always finish a project using this technique of making your own beaded bead and this link at the end.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, that's the best part. And I was thinking, you know, we could shorten the class up and do a regular, you know, throw a lobster claw on it. But then we get to show something cool that's useful for so many different designs. See, I agree with that totally. I'm going to go ahead and trim that. That is a really solidly woven in piece. You can knot these if you like to, and that would be totally okay in this design. It's such a fast make that even if you had to pull it apart to fix something, it would be faster to just remake it than worried about where your knots are. So feel free to knot if you like to. And I'm just coming over here, just going to go through the top here. And I thought I might actually show how to knot. in case anyone wants to do that.
Actually, Danielle, I don't think any of us have really seen you use a knot, so it will be great.
Okay. What I'm thinking for this one is I'll go up through the bead. So the thing with knots and why they aren't my favorite, but when they're done right, they work great. It's just that where you put them and where you're going to exit from next kind of becomes important. So I'm down here underneath this 8. This is a great place to hide a knot under here because it's not really going to show, and I want this to be in the center anyway. So the other thing about knots is they tend to move the position of your work. So when you're you'll really notice it in some designs. You go and tie a knot and you'll see absolutely where that knot is because it shifts the beadwork around. But in this one, I'm going to use that to my advantage. And what I just did there is I just looped through it underneath the 6, and I'm going to just pull tight. And it tightened everything up here and it put it right in the center, which I thought looks kind of cool. And now all I got to do is just go down through the center beads here, exit from the bottom and trim it. And I pulled really tight on that, just making sure my knot was solid. You could have knotted it twice up here if you wanted to, but there's so many passes through that center bead that I feel confident about it. Okay, and so there's our little daisy chain. And so I thought we'd, maybe put some charms on it and see if that looks cool. You could put charms all around it. The best part of this design, being as solid as it is without any gaps, is you can hang something from it, and that would work out great. So I always kind of struggle with getting these open, but if you get your flush cutters under them, it can help. I do like this packaging though, because it is great for storing it. You don't get any tarnishing. So I chose the initials of my kids. And the one on the handout has my younger sons. And so my older son, well, where's the one with my initials? So here's his. And so I'm using my square nose pliers for this one on this side to hold my jump ring. And I found the seam of the jump ring, it's up here. And I purposely put the seam at the top from where I'm going to open it. And then come along with these bent nose pliers and just open it in a lateral motion. And then anywhere you like, I'm trying to remember where I put it on the handout. I think I put it down by the loop. And it was up a few. But I was going for super asymmetrical. You could try to center it, or and there you go. And these are really on trend right now. I'm noticing like just letter beads in general, and pearls and daisy chain. Those are just, they're really stylish, and especially like with the teens nowadays, they really love the look of the letter beads. So here's a really cool like level up way to make this classic looking design kind of modern in a way.
Danielle, I think you did amazing for time. Because our class is Friday night and our recording isn't live until Monday, I think there's just a few people. If you would just demonstrate starting, then if you would do that one more time, then I think a lot of people could just go ahead and make it this weekend and not have to wait for the recording. If you demo the first one that you put on.
Yeah, let's go ahead and are you thinking maybe we'll start just from the beginning?
Yeah, if you just show the very, very start, adding in the very first pearl.
Okay, so for your design, you'd want to cut about 70 inches of thread. And that's because we leave a really long tail, and we're aiming to have a bunch of working thread left at the end so you can do that beaded bead. So that's why so much thread. And of course, you'd want to change that up if your design is going to be longer or shorter. But I've just got a little bit of thread here that I'm working with. And then the first thing you'd want to do is put a stop bead on. And so to make one of those, just pick up one of your size 11 beads and slide it down, come back through it. and it kind of locks it in place. And then this is just one way to do a daisy chain. Pick up 3 size 11s and then 1 pearl. And these pearls are actually seed beads. They're my size 6 seed beads from, they're called, well, this one says they're called blanc, or sorry, they're just called white, but they look pearl to me. And they're definitely opaque, but they're very pearly. And so I strung the 3 11s and the size 6 bead, and now I just need 1 more 11. And then go back down through the 6. And so that bead's going to kind of turn on its side when you do that. And back here on the other side of it, go through the 11 on the other side, go through it in the opposite direction. So it's going your tail, I mean, say your thread's coming through the bead, you go through this bead and you come back through it. And now we're going to go in the opposite direction through that bead, which turns it on its side, like a little Saturn. I don't know if you guys can see that. I want to make sure it's clear in the camera. So when you go back through the 6, so I just went through that bead and I'm going back to the 6, it becomes really pronounced. I'm separating these beads on purpose so you guys can see what I mean. You see how it kind of turns on its side? And then you can go through the other one. You get your little Saturn. Or Sharon said it looked like 2 stop beads on either side. And so now we're in a really great spot to add loops around the bead that look like those daisy chains. Oops, I launched one of those 11s, guys. Good. Okay, so I got 4. I found that 4 was a good number for the size 6 seed beads. So just going around. And I'm going to go through the 11 on the other side again. And pull that tight. You need 4 more. And then come down the other side. When you pull tight, you get a really snug little daisy chain. And if you're working this with a larger bead, you just change the counts on the side. I'm going to do 1 more. So here's 3 beads on the needle. Here's a 6, and then 1 more 11. Bring it down. And then just go back through the size 6 bead. And pull it tight. And then come back through that 11 at the bottom. Keep in mind we're going the opposite direction. Back through the size 6 bead. And then through that 11 again. So it looks like that at this step. And I'm just going to loop around it again with size 11 beads. So here's 4. Going through that side. And 4 more. My needle's kind of bent, so it's hard for me to pick up the beads. And there we go. And so you just keep going like that, and you can change up your bead sizes. None of the steps have to change other than how many you add here. So we've been adding 4 for these beads. But if you were using one of the larger beads from like one of these strands or any of your own beads that you wanted to try, you would just play with the counts. And I found for a 6mm bead, if you're working with size 11s, that you would need about 8 of them to get around. So that's 8 on one side, 8 on the other, and 10 for an 8mm bead. And so this design, even though we worked it with 11s, we were using size 6 beads, that one I held up earlier, I also forgot to mention that I made this one with size 10 and not 11s. So these are actually the size 10 turquoise beads. And those are little 4mm gemstones inside. And so the counts for this are a little different because I'm using 10s, but it was about 5. The best way to come up with those counts though is to just play around with your stitch. So when you're working on it, just try like, hey, I like the look of 5. I like the look of 4, and see, especially, if you're working with gemstones, they can have some variations. So you want to play with that, and it doesn't detract from the look of your work if those counts are different. No one's going to notice that.
Danielle, that was perfect. I think you managed to answer anyone who came a little bit late. Got to see the start again, which is awesome. And the recording will be live on Monday for watching it more than once.
Yeah, we'll have it was live on Monday last week, so I think it was pretty quick.
Yes.
And we always post it too.
Danielle, a little bit of concern on the sidebar, watching your needle get curvy. That doesn't bother you at all, right? You just keep on going?
Well, because I'm live, but honestly, you guys know those little straighteners? Sometimes I straighten them with those. Oh gosh, what are they called? Nylon jaw.
Yep.
That can sometimes work. It doesn't always. Another thing you can do is you can take your, let's see, where did I put my square nose? You can take your square nose pliers and just kind of try to, especially if it's like your last needle or something, you want to make it last a little longer. I was probably really pulling on something, and trying to get into tight spaces is when I tend to do that. Ooh, I made it worse, guys. Sorry. Yeah, to your peril, you should try doing that. The nylon jaw is a better idea. I don't have any of those in front of me. But...
Yep, but that it's a great tip.
Yeah,
perfect tip. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and is there anything else I can show, like with I can do the different count one on this one, or?
You know what, Danielle, with the time that's left, maybe you just want to tell people about what's coming up.
Yeah, we have a leisurely, we can show everything and answer questions about it. Actually, that's a great idea. So next week, so I'm going to put our 2 next classes up here on the mat. And so this is next week's class, and next week's class is a workshop. It's a 2-hour workshop, and it's not as easy to find as these other ones for registering, because it's under the cutting edge classes section on the website. So you go to michaels.com/classes, and then you'll see where all the replays are, but right above it there's just like a little square, and that square says cutting edge classes. You want to click on that, it'll open up, you'll see a picture of a Cricut, and scroll down. We're the second class on that list at the moment, as of this morning when I looked. And so what this is it's a Russian spiral worked with size 8 and size 6. And you can use any colors you want. There was a purple colorway in the handout and in the photographs that are displayed for the class. But you can use any of your favorite mixes. I'd recommend getting 2 tubes of your mix so that you can be sure you have enough of each color. But you'll only need 1 tube of the size 8, some thread and a needle, and then some leather cord and a button if you like a button. I do have a version with a button. The one shown in here is just a little knot that I'll go through that during the class as well. But what's cool about this is it's we have a lot of extra time, so we can go through it multiple times and make sure everybody's got their questions answered. So that's next week, and again that's July 23rd, and it's at 5 p.m. Central Time. That's that one. And then we are doing, I'm excited about this one. This is one of my favorites. It's this peyote stitch with super duo beads. And it's really easy and it's really fast. And then you can embellish it in any way that you'd like. So in class, I'm going to show how to make this, how to do the little closure end, and then how to do this embellishing, which is kind of similar to what we did last week with tacking. You remember how we were doing for the eye? We were going under and over. Well, this is a really similar method, and it's using this as like fabric. And we capture the threads in between to kind of add the shells. And so that's on July 30th at 5 p.m. And that's a regular 1-hour class. And it's in the regular place to go find for registration. And I want to show I got asked a question earlier because the PDF for this is not on the place to register, and I think we'll get it added. But in the meanwhile, I want to show this is an earring design that I did. That's part of the class. It's an optional, but it's so cute together. So that's why in the handout it says optional ear wires and optional cowrie charms, because that's what that's for. And let's see. Actually, so after this class, this is at 5 p.m. Central. Then our first class in August, we're switching to 2 p.m. Central. And it's all my fault, but yay for me, my kids are going back to school, but our bus pickup time is at 3. So this time for me, which is like currently right now for me, it's 3:52. It's right during the pickup. So we're switching to 2 p.m. Central Time on Fridays going forward, starting in August. And I hope that works for everybody, that we can, but of course we still have all the recordings and everything. So that's going to be our new time slot going forward, starting for the fall. And yeah, and so we have so much coming up, and then I can't wait to show you guys all of the August content. Our first August class is actually a design to sell. So it's another one of our, we do have a project for that class, but it's also going to have some extra Q&A for people who are interested in selling their work for the holidays. So yeah, we're still got loads of time. So Carmi, is there anything else I can?
No, I think, it's going to take a little bit of time for people to get adjusted to going back to Fridays at 2.
Yeah.
So for all of us. So we'll definitely keep reminding them about that. And those classes are going to be live on the site. Mm-hmm. People will find a way, we'll make it work. And I just want to remind people that Danielle always wants to see your finished pieces. So please tag us. And please tag Make It With Michaels. That's really great for us to see the work.
Yes, awesome. Yes, thank you for that, because the creations that you guys are posting are really beautiful, and it's really inspiring to see them. Yeah, and so well, I guess I'll just wish you guys a happy Friday, and we'll see you next week and Friday after that for our Seaside bracelet, and have a great weekend. Bye.